Let's talk about the Chagos Islands. I remember when they first came back in the news. For most of us just quickly Googled, where are the Chagos Islands? Well, now we know all about them. We also know they're about to be handed over to Mauritius. No one's quite sure about why Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, thinks that should be one of the first acts of his new government from last July, to reopen negotiations to hand over a British sovereign territory to a country that has never had any claim on those islands, many, many thousands away in the Indian Ocean. But for some reason, he thought that was a good idea. And he also thought it was a good idea for us to pay some £9 billion plus, but that's the initial payment, to the Mauritian government for the right to lease back the territory that we actually own already for the Diego Garcia military base. Well, that plan was due to be signed off today on literally the dotted line by Keir Starmer this morning. Didn't happen though. Why not? Well, because of a High Court injunction in the early hours of this morning, which prevented that going ahead temporarily. But what will happen next? Well, let's talk about this with Tobias Ellwood. He's a former Defence and Foreign Minister and a former Conservative MP as well. Very good morning to you, Tobias.
Good morning to you.
Nice to get you back on the show. In terms of this High Court injunction, lots of people have been trying to stop this from happening. A lot of Tory MPs still in office trying to stop this from happening. All managed to fail. We thought Donald Trump might veto this, given that the US used this military base in Diego Garcia. No, apparently not. We thought it was going to go ahead, and now it turns out it's a Chagosian and a High Court injunction. What happened?
Well, it is different to the Falklands and Gibraltar and these other sovereign bases. Nobody wants to see British overseas territories handed over, but this is very different from those other territories that I've served at. To place this in context, this is a set of 60 islands south of India, discovered, I think, by Portugal in the 16th century, then colonized by the French. We took it over when we gave Napoleon his marching orders, and we ran it from, I think, 1810 until the late 60s. Mauritius then gained its independence because that's where the islands were administered from. And it's at that point that we separated the Chagos Islands. Given its military value, we removed 2,000 people from the biggest island, Diego Garcia, mostly to Mauritius. But we did promise to cede all those islands back to Mauritius when we deemed it no longer important to use it as a military base. Now, that entire deal was
back to Mauritius. It wasn't ruled by Mauritius.
Let me finish the point because it's rather important.
Yeah.
That entire deal was declared illegal by numerous international bodies, including the International Court of Justice and the UN General Assembly, who ruled that the Chagos Archipelago, including Diego Garcia, should be handed back to Mauritius. And during my time as a minister and in the last Conservative government, we went round the blocks on this to try to prevent this from happening. And we've ended up with America agreeing. Donald Trump confirmed that this deal that we now have, which is where they base their intercontinental bombers and so forth, it's where they administer their power projection in the South Asia area, should be then deemed as a long-term 99-year lease that's been agreed with the British and American governments as well. It's not where we'd like to be, but you then, if you're saying no, you're not going to go down that road, you're then actually saying we're not going to support the outcome of the UN General Assembly. And that will be to the delight of Russia and China. You know what China is doing in the South China Sea. You know what Russia is doing in the Arctic. This is the difficulty. It's a much more nuanced argument than compared with the Falklands.
Well, yeah, you say it's nuanced. You talk about the international courts. None of this was legally binding. These were all politically motivated and orchestrated legal campaigns. It's a load of abject nonsense. Mauritius has never ruled Chagos Islands, never has any claim to it. Absolutely absurd that we should even be thinking about this. No one can work out why on earth the Prime Minister thought this was a top priority. This never had to happen. There's no legal requirement for it. But he wants to hand it over, but then lease it back again. Why on earth does he not think it's a military risk? And why on earth has Donald Trump not vetoed it? Because that was one of the expectations, that when Donald Trump came into office, if we could delay it until he was in office on the 20th of January, when he got inaugurated for the second time, then he would clearly go, well, this is insane. Of course we're not going to agree to this. But he seems to have said it's okay. Why would they say that when everyone's concerned about the Chinese influence on Mauritius and the Chinese ability to get closer and listening posts and the like around this very significant military base that has been used for flying, jets to battles in the Middle East? This is a significant military base.
Oh yes, I mean, I don't disagree with you that it's one of our most important bases. Its location allows that power projection from America and Britain. It participated very much so in the Afghan campaigns in Iraq and so forth, absolutely important. But ultimately, Donald Trump, who focuses on the art of the deal, his team, in fact, I was in America last week discussing this with the State Department. They've looked at the legal details. I hear what you say, but you're then going into a new place where you're actually going against international law.
No, we're not. No, Tobias, that is completely wrong. There is no binding legal requirement for us to hand over this island to another island that has no claim on it.
Well,
it's a load of abject nonsense. It's British.
It's not abject nonsense.
It is.
You can't dismiss it so quickly. Whether it's legally binding or not, or whether it is the minds of the court, of the International Court of Justice and the UN General Assembly, what you are then saying is giving kudos. You're giving power to Russia and China to do the same thing.
They already do that, by the way. They already do that. I think both of those bodies are a complete waste of space now, frankly. I've got very, very little time for both of them at the end of the day. But the point is, this is British territory. It doesn't have to be handed over. It is a risk. Why do you think that Keir Starmer is so keen on doing this, other than the fact that all his mates are human rights lawyers who are making big bucks off it?
No, I think it came up simply because it was a legacy issue from the previous government. This is something that the last Foreign Secretary was involved with, James Cleverly. It was on his books. It goes all the way back to David Cameron as well. No government wanted to do it because...
And they didn't do it. They didn't do it. Funnily enough, they didn't do it.
They didn't. All they did is kick the can down the road. The Americans have been sitting beside the British in discussing where all this should go. Yeah. And Jonathan Powell was involved, the National Security Advisor too. I spoke to him about this and I said, why couldn't we do exactly what you're suggesting? And he said the wider international connotations of this would mean that we would then be relinquishing our sort of representation as a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. I would like to see
very briefly
withhold this as much as you. But the deal that we've now got confirms that we can continue with that power projection, with you operating it as a base. It's not the best outcome, but it's the best that we could come across right now. Otherwise, the law, we're running out of space.
I think that's absolute cobblers. Absolute cobblers. I really do, Tobias. Tobias, we'll have to leave it there. He's former Defence and Foreign Office Minister. Philip Ingram is here. He's a former senior military intelligence officer. This is abject nonsense. This is not a legally binding ruling. This is a load of political game playing going on in the courts and in the UN. Utterly meaningless. We should have just put two fingers up and said, sod off.
There's no reason we couldn't have kept kicking the can down.
Just say no. Have some balls. Say no.
But you're looking at the planning for the future. The planning for the future, the biggest growing threat in the region is the Chinese expansionism that's going there. This gives them a foot in the door. Yeah. This doesn't make it more secure. I don't know where Tobias is coming from with that. The Chinese are sitting there laughing all the way to the bank, and they're already starting to plan and will have planned what they're going to be doing next.
I mean, again, the Mauritian government is totally beholden. I mean, again, as we know, China's just been sort of buying up every, African government. I mean, they really have. It's one thing. Again, we were talking about planning for our immigration. China's doing the long-term planning that our governments, Western governments, are. I think this smells so fishy. I can't even believe it. I really, really think it smells fishy.